Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Megan, and I am the manager of Two Bright Lights. And I have to say, we have some awesome content for you today. I can't wait to dive in and take some notes, but I am joined by Lindsay and Heather from LVL Weddings and LVL Academy, and they're going to tell you more about that and more about themselves. But this is going to be fantastic. We're going to be talking about how to design, plan, and execute a real wedding in order to get it published, which is pretty awesome and is going to be full of things that you need to write down. So make sure you have your notebook and your pen and maybe even some water, coffee, or a glass of wine, depending where you are, because I did see some people joining from Europe. No judgments here. I'm just jealous. So definitely grab that, get your notebook, let's get ready. And I think, honestly, this is a very timely conversation, as many of us in the industry are aware of the announcement that happened last week about Style Me Pretty potentially closing. So there's so much for us to talk about, and talking about the importance of really diversifying your submission strategy. So you did not join to hear from me. So now I'm going to pass things over to them, and they're going to take it away. So thanks again.
Hey guys.
Hi.
It's Lindsay and Heather here. We're so excited to be here. And I was telling Heather this morning, I'm like, I normally talk in front of people and I'm totally okay with it. But the idea that there was 370 people that signed up, or 375, I was like all nervous. And so bear with us. We're definitely excited to talk to you about the idea of getting your wedding featured and published, and that whole process that goes into it, because we know it can oftentimes be a little overwhelming. But before we do that, I thought it would be a good idea for Heather and I to tell you a little bit about our background and where we came from and how we got into weddings. Oh, and I should probably share the screen with you. All right. Here we go. So a little bit about my background. I grew up in the Midwest, so I don't know if anyone's out there that grew up in Ohio or the Cleveland area, but I grew up in a small town called Avon Lake, Ohio, and I always loved planning parties and events, and I have a claim to fame that I threw the best sixth grade birthday party out there. So no, all kidding aside, I just didn't know that I could make a career out of weddings and events. And so I went to college and got a communications degree, moved to Chicago after college, and hopped into corporate America and was in human resources. And it was about 2 years in that I realized my khaki and polo wearing days were short-lived, and I started working for a wedding planner part-time. And it was then that I realized that I had a true passion for taking care of people and planning events, and what better way to do that than planning someone's wedding. So I married my passion for weddings and my entrepreneurial spirit and launched LVL Weddings and Events back in 2007. So I moved from the Midwest all the way over to sunny Southern California because I knew I could do weddings there all year round. Fast forward to today, and we have an office here in Orange County. We also do weddings up in wine country. We have a team there, and have expanded into Hawaii and destination markets. So over the last 10 years, as Heather and I have grown a team, we also realized the importance of training. So we created the LVL method, which 5 years ago, we decided to launch LVL Academy and help other planners out there really grow their business and create a sustainable career for them. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll turn it over to Heather.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, guys. So my name is Heather. I am partner and principal planner here at LVL Weddings and Events. And my story starts here in sunny Southern California. Sorry, all of you in snow right now, but I grew up in Ventura County, and I actually got my start in weddings really young. I was 17, and I worked at a bridal salon. And I loved it when brides came in with their magazine cutouts and showed me the dresses that they wanted to try on. And it was here that I saw the excitement and the love and celebration that surrounded weddings. And fast forward, when I moved to college, I went to Long Beach State, and I had the opportunity to work for a catering company. And this catering company did primarily weddings. And so it was really cool to see 3 to 5 weddings a weekend. And I started out as a server, and I dropped a tray of champagne flutes. So that didn't go so well. And I was able to move into a wedding coordinator role. So I actually did on-site coordination and catering management there for 5 years. I had the very unique opportunity to really only meet my clients right before their rehearsal. So I would get their folder and I would run their rehearsal and I would send them on their way. And then I would get a new folder and run that wedding's rehearsal and send them on their way. So I had a very brief opportunity to kind of win them over and show them that I could get to know who they were and help them with their wedding day. Now, I briefly then had my own company, which didn't go so well. After over 500 weddings, I thought, oh, I will start my own company. I'll get to be more creative. I'll meet new people. And unfortunately, that led to me sitting on my couch wondering where all the couples were, and no one wanted to hire me. I didn't really know how to run a business, and I was in one of the most saturated wedding markets in the world. And fortunately, someone introduced me to Lindsay, and she and I went to coffee, and we talked for about 4 hours, and I like to joke we've been together ever since. So I've been with LVL going on 9 years now, and doing weddings going on 13, and have had the opportunity to be the co-founder of LVL Academy and lead instructor, where we get to just really share our passion for raising the bar and educating wedding planners so that they can really succeed in their careers.
Awesome. Well, Heather, thanks for sharing your background. And so as you can see, Heather and I do not have a background in marketing, which doesn't mean that we're not educated and you know, that we can't share with you our knowledge, because we've really learned the hard way over the last 10 years. But I think that it just makes this such an important topic because all of us are really good at our crafts. I'm a really great wedding planner. You know, Heather's a great planner. There's probably great floral designers on the call, great photographers, but it's really important that you also are great at marketing your business, because that's ultimately going to propel your business forward. And I think that it's a really timely time to be talking about this, as Megan had mentioned, with the potential closing of Style Me Pretty. I don't know about you guys, but it really helped me to just remember how important it is to take your marketing into your own hands. And you can't just rely on one powerhouse to do that for you. And I have to admit, you know, I submitted, I would say 75% of our weddings to Style Me Pretty, and sort of I wasn't diversifying. And now Heather and I are going to have to go back to the drawing board and really think about our marketing game plan going forward. And I think it's just a good reminder for all of us that we really need to educate ourselves, always be up to date with the best marketing strategies out there. Now, that being said, the topic of getting submitted, like submitting your wedding and that whole process and getting your wedding published, can be super overwhelming. And when I first started my business, I was paralyzed by, I think, fear that how was I going to be published in top wedding magazines or top wedding blogs, and how do I connect with editors, and these questions that sort of felt like it was almost untouchable. And part of that was, you know, we weren't doing $1 million weddings, and you know, it seemed overwhelming. But what we want to do today is change your mindset, because you don't have to be doing $1 million weddings. You can really be doing great weddings with unique stories, and we're going to show you how to take that and strategize with your vendor team so that you can design, plan, and execute weddings for submission and publication. But before we jump into, oh, here we go. Sorry, guys. Here we go. So before we jump into the cycle of getting your wedding featured, I want to talk to you about 3 important topics that you're going to want to write down. So number one is finding the potential. So not every client is going to be ideal in every single aspect. That's just not realistic. But what your job is to almost have the mindset of a reporter and think about what's that angle that is really going to make that wedding unique and different, whether it's a unique venue or the client's story, or maybe they have a little bit more in their design budget because that's something that's really important to them. Really finding that potential is really, really key to getting your wedding published. And number two, never make your client feel like their wedding is not as important as getting featured. So, we are very much about customer service at LVL. And the only time a client would even know that we are going to be submitting their wedding is just getting their approval. So saying, the conversation goes something like this, your wedding has potential to get featured in the X publication and we're really excited about it. Would you be open to it? And just sort of talking and answering any questions that they have. And as soon as they give you the approval, that's the last they should hear about it, because their wedding ultimately is way more important than getting the wedding featured. So I think it's really important that you hold true to that and don't get lost and caught up in just the publication side of things.
Definitely.
Yeah. And last but not least is who is taking the lead on submitting. So I think it's kind of crazy. In all of my 10 years of doing weddings, I can count on one hand how many vendors that I've been working with have actually approached me to submit a wedding. And typically we're really taking the lead on doing that, which I think is a good idea.
Yeah.
Your planner should at least be part of that process, because we ultimately have all of the resources and details of who was involved in the wedding, from the bridesmaid robes to the dress and the attire. But I also think it's something to consider that if you are a floral designer, a photographer, even a DJ, entertainment, doesn't matter. If you feel like there's potential for your couple to get their wedding published, then talk to their planner. And if they don't have a planner, God help them. But then I would say the next person to help you would be the photographer. So
yeah, and I think it's just really important to either communicate if the planner is going to take the lead or the photographer. I've had people that actually submitted weddings that I planned and didn't even tell me they were submitting them to publication. So that just really leaves a lot of room for error.
Yeah.
It means that you could potentially have missing credits because the other vendor team didn't know. You could be missing the resources that a lot of bloggers want to give access to their readers. Or what if I was already submitting that to a publication that only takes,
has exclusivity.
Exactly. And so it just really leaves it up for error instead of, communication.
Absolutely. And to touch on the communication piece, everyone in my office is like rolling their eyes probably at me. But if there's one thing that you leave with today from this webinar, it's that communication is key to getting your wedding featured. It really is. And it's also key to bringing your vendor relationships together and strategizing. And so always communicate, always be talking to your planner, talking to your vendor team, and working together to get your wedding submitted and potentially featured.
Yep.
Oh, I am not doing a good job on the slides here. This is my one job. Okay.
All right, guys, so we came up with the wedding publication cycle, as you can see here. And this is our really easy to follow plan to ensure that you can take your very best work and get featured in publications that attract your ideal client. So when you're working with a couple, the very first step is to get to know them. You really can't design a unique wedding for your couple until you get to know them, of course. So it's really important to ask them questions and then use those important details to design with your client in mind.
Yeah, and I just recently saw, I don't know who on here has seen this, but there was something posted on Instagram, and it was a escort card display, not card, but escort display of Himalayan sea salt shot glasses with tequila in them and a little lime on top with the guest's name, and that was their seating chart. And I can't help but think that there had to have been a story behind that, not to mention probably why they got featured. And I wish I was a guest at that wedding, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a beautiful execution of a cool idea. And this is really the best way to bring unique and personalized elements that are going to grab attention of the editors and really stand out for publication. So the next step is diving into the design. And there are some really important factors that we want you to consider, and we're going to walk you through those shortly. Now that you have the design, it's time to build the dream team, as we like to call it. So here's where I feel pretty strongly that the design comes before the vendor team. I like to dream up new and personalized ideas, and then I select the vendor team to go with that. I want to make sure that the vendor team suits the couple's personality, their expectations, and the design, but more on that later.
Yes, and once you have your design and your vendor team in place, now it's time to get planning. And for all the planners and other vendors listening, the biggest piece to all of this during planning is the timeline. So you'll want to make sure that first and foremost, the timeline is set up for success for your client, and then allows time for your photographer and your styling team to capture the wedding in a way that would best suit getting your wedding submitted. So photographers out there, hopefully you're amening.
Loving
right
this.
Yeah.
We highlight wedding day.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now that you have the plan, next up is the wedding day. And this is where you really bring your client's story, your design, and your vendor team's hard work to life. Now, a couple weeks after the wedding is when you get those images. And I don't know about you guys, but to me, when my inbox pops up with wedding images, it feels like Christmas morning. And I don't care how busy I am or what I'm doing. I've literally pulled over to the side of the road and I immediately click through and scroll through all the beautiful images. And there's nothing better than seeing the result of all of that hard work and their story come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. My husband's like, get off your phone. I'm like, no, I just got photos from one of my weddings. So, okay. So now that you have your images and you've chosen your top ones, now you're ready to pitch to a publication. And in an ideal world, you would pitch to a publication that has your ideal client in mind. And this cycle should really be self-sustaining. So if all goes well and you continue to get published in a place that attracts your ideal client, then you're most likely going to book your ideal client and the fun starts all over again. So, that is our wedding publication cycle.
Perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the wedding publication cycle, and we are going to start with the client. So I want to share with you my top 5 questions that I love asking my couples when I'm really in that getting to know them phase. So you're going to want to write these down. Number 1, what is your favorite thing to do together? Number 2, how did you meet? Number 3, tell me about your engagement story. Number 4, where have you traveled? And number 5, how are friends and family important to you? And I really found that these 5 questions allow you to get to know your couple, their relationship, their story, what they like to do together, and how they probably want the look and feel and overall importance of their wedding.
Yeah, and in addition to Heather's 5 questions, I love asking one more, and that's, is there something special that really embodies your relationship, whether it's a verse, a song, a place? I think this is a really telling question that can bring out that unique element.
I like that.
Yeah, and I think overall, the whole idea here is to really listen to your couple and have great conversations so that you can use that to fuel the inspiration for your design and ultimately get your wedding published.
Perfect. So We don't quite have enough time to walk through the entire design process. I wish we did. But as promised, here are the 3 things you absolutely want to keep in mind when you're designing for publication. Now, the first one is, like we talked about, designing with the couple's story in mind. And okay, I have a great story I want to share with you guys. So I'm working with a couple right now, and they dated in high school. And when he asked her to prom, he had painted a giant heart on the bedroom wall with, it said, "Will you go to prom with me? Check yes or no." And they went to prom together. They went off to college and they dated for a few years. And now it was time to pop the question. And he tricked her into coming over to his childhood home and had done the same thing. He had written up on the wall, "Will you marry me? Check yes or no." And so as my couple was telling me this story, first of all, the most adorable thing I've ever heard, I definitely was kind of teary-eyed because
That's not abnormal for you, though.
I cry a lot, but I just thought that was such a special part of their story. And so I was really excited. And it started kind of the wheels turning before they even finished the story that, oh my gosh, we have to incorporate this into their RSVP. And so we're currently in the invitation design phase, and their RSVP card is going to have the heart with the, can you make it, yes or no? So I'm excited to bring in that part of their story. So back to our list, number 2, you want to design with an aesthetic that people will love. So here it's pretty important to keep in mind the trends, the details, and refined style that makes people double tap an Instapost or pin to their Pinterest boards so that it's something that will really be something people will enjoy. And number 3, bring in unique and personal details. So the photo that you can see right now, this is a wedding I did last year, and for the escort board, we did a tennis style tournament bracket. And the backstory here is that the couple had met playing tennis, and their favorite activity to do together was to play tennis. So it was such a good way to incorporate their story. And the guests ended up using it as a photo backdrop and loved it. And the couple ended up keeping it, and it's in their garage. So this is one of those unique ways to bring in their story. Now, if you're keeping all 3 of these things in mind, you are really setting up both the wedding and the submission to stand out.
Absolutely. All right.
So next up is that team, the dream team. We believe that your vendor team is the most important piece to having a successful wedding and definitely a successful submission.
Yep.
So for the purpose of this discussion, there are 3 vendors we're going to specifically talk about that play an important role in the wedding submission. Now, that's not to say, of course, that all vendors aren't super important. But the 3 we are going to focus on right now are photography, floral design, and then the details.
Yeah, and so I'm going to dive into why photography is so important. And I think the obvious is you can't have a wedding submitted if you don't have photos, right? So, but why is it that according to bloggers, the number 1 reason weddings get declined is because of the quality of photography, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I've had incredible weddings that weren't able to get featured because of the photography style. Maybe their detail shots weren't on point. And I have to say, and I know Heather feels very strongly about this, because is that it's just soul crushing, because you can't put it on your website and you have these beautiful images, and it's really, it's a really hard pill to swallow. So on the same token, I've had simple but beautiful weddings that weren't as crazy over the top as the others, but had great photography and great detail shots, great styling that were picked up by top wedding blogs or publications. So I think this is why it's so important to collaborate with a photographer who's dedicated to those detail shots, and they're willing to work with you as a team instead of sort of fighting against that. And I also think, just from a planner's perspective, that's why making really great, strong relationships with photographers is really important.
Yeah, if you've seen behind the scenes photos of a photographer standing on a chair over a table, that is a photographer you want to work with.
Yes, agreed, agreed.
All right, so next up is floral design. And it is so important to select the right person for the job. As I design, I tend to really consider the floral designers in my arsenal. And as I pin images to a design board, I actually will use portfolio images from those floral designers. And then it kind of becomes more obvious who probably is the best fit. Now, I know I want to work with a floral designer that has attention to detail, that has a good sense of style, but most importantly, that is willing to collaborate. Now, on the flip side, you have to be able to really give a floral designer the creative space that they need. They're an artist. So if you just really talk about the details and what the expectations are, but step back, and I always kind of joke, like, you do you, that's really when you're going to get the best work from an artist.
Yeah, you've got to trust them for sure. And one way to help sort of alleviate the unknown is doing a floral mock-up. If you want your wedding to be featured, you must do a floral mock-up. And you may have a client who doesn't want to necessarily pay for that or doesn't see the value in it. And I would say then you should make that investment from your business because it's totally worth it. And on the flip side, if your client is open to a floral mock-up, this is a great way for you to bring in some unique, maybe outside of the box designs that you can't find on Pinterest, and you can show them in person. Because sometimes it's hard to get that on paper, and a floral mock-up will allow you to, because at a floral mock-up, it's just not the flowers. It's the whole tablescape and all of the details that go into it. So
yeah, and I tend to be a little conservative when I'm designing behind a computer screen, but once the linens and napkins and stationery details and all of that's together, I tend to go a little more bold because once you take a photo of it, you might realize like, oh, that's a little too muted, or here is a great idea and the client wasn't into it until they saw it in real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the third and very important vendor to the team is bringing those details to life. So whether it's a stationer or a calligrapher or maybe someone from Etsy, here's where you want to collaborate with a professional to make sure that the execution of those details are flawless and refined. Rather than just passing along the design board and walking away and saying, here's what I want, I really recommend actually sitting down with that person. So one of the most creative weddings I've ever done really came out of the stationer and I sitting and like giggling for 2 hours. And we went, what if we did this? And what if we did this? And we came up with a laundry list of great ideas, because when you really collaborate with your creative partners, the best things come to life. Now, we could only convince our clients to do half of them, but if we hadn't come up with them, the wedding would have been totally different and probably not submission worthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now that you have your design in place, you have your vendor team, now it's your role as the planner to communicate. And we have come up with 5 key principles on what the plan entails. And that is creating a timeline that leaves room for amazing detail shots. This is imperative. You've got to build in time for detail shots in your timeline. And that's why we, have a really, like, the timeline is our Bible. And we also make sure that we review that timeline with the photographer, because they're the ones that can tell us, okay, I need more time for this or that. Number 2 is saying yes to the first look, because this allows more time for details, for portraits, and emotional images.
Now, you may not be able to convince your client to do a first look, and that's okay, but then you need to kind of pad your timeline accordingly so that those detail images are still possible when they don't do a first look.
Absolutely. And since lighting is crucial, you've got to be mindful of where the detail photos are being taken. And when, like, we always talk about, hopefully the client didn't already sort of set their ceremony in place, but ideally the ceremony should not be before sunset, because this will, after sunset, because then it will allow you for more time for those great photos.
I don't know why brides think that, oh, a sunset ceremony is perfect. But if they're not willing to do a first look and they want a sunset ceremony or things run behind, then everything is in the dark. And that's probably not the result they're going to want in their images.
Absolutely. So number 4, you're going to want to have a detailed shot list of all the personal items that a photographer wouldn't necessarily know about that are going to be key to getting that wedding published. For example, I recently did a wedding for a bride whose family owned an essential oil company. So she wanted, I think, 60 diffusers.
So many.
and she had 3 different spaces. Our ceremony, cocktail hour, and reception were all in different spaces. So she wanted those diffusers all over around the perimeter of each of those spaces. And she wanted to use the company's candles. Now, the photographer may not have known that those were really important elements to her wedding, but I made sure to take note of that. And I think maybe he also knew because you could smell the essential oils throughout the whole wedding. But that is honestly why that wedding got featured, because of those really specific personal details. And last but not least, talking about communication, I am a huge proponent of putting down your cell phone, putting away your computer, and hopping on a call with your vendor team. If you have a plan to get your wedding submitted and published, you've got to communicate. You've got to get on the phone, have a last minute powwow of how things are going to run so that you guys can make sure you have a really good game plan in place.
Definitely. All right, so now we are on to the wedding day, and I want to kind of share with you the flow of a wedding day for me. And of course, this is when all the magic happens. So as I arrive in the morning, I unpack all of the personal items and paper goods and details, and I like to pull out 1 or 2 of each and put them aside for detail photos for the photo and video team later. I found that this is just a much more efficient way to have all of that ready instead of later kind of having to unwrap everything and grab it around. So those can be like cocktail napkins, place cards, escort cards, ceremony programs, things like that. Now, after I go and check in with my couple, of course, and check on the setup, that is when we're usually getting into the styling and detailing of those detail photos. And here is where I love having fresh florals. Oh, we have to tell you a story. So we were recently doing an academy, and I think most planners ask for fresh florals, right? And we had a floral friend teaching, and she was telling the attendees that florists don't just have extra flowers. Like, that's not something they account for. And so apparently there is a term that planners do to florists, and it's called being loose bloomed because you ask for loose blooms. So try not to loose bloom your floral team, and make sure that you add or ask for the loose florals ahead of time. And we're definitely guilty of that.
Oh, for sure. When she was talking about it, I'm like, I've asked her that several times.
I've personally done that to her. Whoops.
So we learned a valuable lesson.
So be sure to ask for that ahead of time. So now that we are laying out those details and getting them ready for detail photos, one of the things that I like to do is have a couple linens that really go with the aesthetic and design for the flat lay photos. And that really ensures that the detail photos are in line with the overall design and they're not just shot on a carpet.
Yeah, and very cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
One other tip is that some photographers actually have styling boards.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like to just ask if they have a styling board and then see if they can bring it. So that way you have something that they're comfortable and a surface they're comfortable working with.
Yep.
Because sometimes the linens can be wrinkly, you just don't know the fabric or texture. So styling boards work too.
Yeah, and the next tip is to actually send the invitation to the photographer ahead of time. So typically I'll order 1 or 2 extra options, or if you can in the process, just actually mail one, like when you're sending them out to all the guests, just mail it to the photographer. And then I also like to have them on site that day. And so we'll style it out, and just in case something is spilled on it, or you run out of time, or you're working in a tropical location with a ton of humidity, the photographer has one at home to shoot on their own time in their own terms if needed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then one of the next tips is to really take matters into your own hands. So if you are in a situation where the setting is less than ideal in terms of lighting or kind of the background, if you're in a dark ballroom and you have a beautiful design and it's going to break your heart because those detail photos aren't going to quite be what you want, don't hesitate to literally pick that table up and carry it outside. So if you can do that, take the time to really quickly just move it outside, lay it all out, and then have the detail photos taken out there in addition to the overalls and stuff in the room. Or if you can, even better, have a full table, linen, 6 place settings, the floral arrangement, everything extra set up, and you can do that outside. And then there's probably even more time to get those images. Just recently, we were doing a wedding in Maui, and it ended up being a rainy day. So we were under a tent we hadn't really intended on. And so luckily, we had an extra table and had everything set up. And so Lindsay was assisting me, and I was, busy with the couple and making sure that they were good. And so Lindsay and the photographer set up the full table outside of the tent. And those are the detail photos that we really love and the client really loves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other little side note is just making sure that you have someone on site that is on your team that is specifically handling making sure everything looks perfect. Now, it doesn't have to be exact on every table. It's like, that's not really realistic to have your charger 1 inch from the table. Maybe for some planners, but I just not how I operate. So I make sure that I have a very detailed assistant or planner helping me on the wedding day and working with the photographer to ensure that that table is perfect. The one that they're shooting is perfect. The silverware is straight. The menu is, on point and everything. There's no water in the water glasses. There's no butter on the table.
No salt and peppers.
So you really need to think about those details, and having someone on your team to help you do that is really crucial because you're going to be focused on the bride. So you can't be focused on.
Yeah, we've had really big weddings that we kind of learned that lesson the hard way. And if we didn't have someone dedicated to making sure those images are clean and all the details are ready, then we're probably ended up with photos that weren't quite what we were looking for.
Yeah, and I think the wedding day, this is when it all happens. You cannot go back. So it's very important that you guys really take note of the last 7 tips that Heather and I mentioned.
Perfect. All right. So, that amazing email comes into your inbox, and it is the images of your hard work and the beautiful wedding and the couple's story. And so now it's time to prep your submission. And I want to go through 6 things to help you ensure that your submission is ready to go. So first and foremost, it's important to know where your wedding is a good fit. Where do you sit in the marketplace? Where are your weddings going to really thrive? So consider the photography quality and style, know the design and the details, and then where that might be a good fit.
Yeah.
Number 2 is be sure you really understand the blog or publication's selection process. So you have to follow directions. We learned when we first started that we were getting rejected because we just weren't following instructions very well.
It was mostly me.
So then it became my job. But, it's really, you could have an amazing wedding, and if you're making more work for an editor, they're just going to decline it because there are other amazing weddings out there. And if you haven't kind of packaged it up in the right way, it's going to get declined, unfortunately.
Well, and this is where Two Bright Lights, I think, really comes into play because, they not only have a matching tool, and they also know how every publication, what their submission process is. So I don't know, Megan, if you want to sort of just chime in on what that looks like on your end.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. And that's a great point. And figuring out what the right publication is for your work or for that event is super, super important. You don't want to waste your own time, and you don't want to waste the editor's time by sending them something that clearly is not the right fit. So Two Bright Lights has created a publication matching tool. So you select different tags when you're creating the album, and then our algorithm takes those tags into consideration and matches you with the publications who are looking for those things. While it makes it a lot easier, but it is just a suggestion, so you still have full control over where you can submit it. One of my favorite ways of doing research about figuring out the certain styles of different publications is scrolling through their Instagram feed.
Yeah.
It's a great and easy way to get a visual representation. You get to see what their photography style is. If they have a specific style that they feature, you get to see if there's certain images that you are looking at, they're looking for time and time again. So that's super helpful.
Yeah,
But-
absolutely.
Yeah. And pay attention to requests. Those
Yeah.
help too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think that, it makes the process less overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
when you have tools like that to help, streamline and really make it just a little bit more straightforward.
Definitely.
Great.
So a few other tips that you'll want to consider when you're putting together that submission are when it comes to the photo selection process, you usually want 100 to 150 images, and those should be mostly colored, not black and white. Now you also want a variety of images, so they should have lots of details, include personal details, emotional moments, not just a bunch of details. I've seen people kind of put together submissions before and they're missing the key elements, the couple. It's not just about all the pretty things. So emotional moments, and then you definitely want to include this tablescape, paper goods, and cake. And know what variation the publication is looking for in terms of landscape or vertical.
Absolutely. All right. So now on to the pitch. This is the final step in submitting your wedding. And I think what Heather and I want to tell you is what the best submissions include. What are those key elements that really make your pitch stand out? And number one is that the best wedding features tell a story, like we've sort of been talking to you about. And that's why it's so important for you to really get to know your couple so that you can tell that story to that publication. Now, another important tip is that all vendors must be credited. And we really prefer to include the wedding website or the vendor's website and their Instagram handle. So there's nothing worse and more defeating than seeing your wedding featured and you're not credited. And that's actually happened to us in print. And that's, you can't go back from there. So it's really important that all vendors are credited appropriately. Note where special elements are from to include attire and, robes and those little elements and those things that make weddings special and unique. And I would say the planner should always be asking about the attire, shoes,
Definitely.
wedding dress, those kind of things. And
Ring box.
Yeah.
And all the little details that another bride is going to want to purchase. If they don't have the answers on how to get them, you're kind of missing out.
Absolutely. And then last but not least is I really think about a wedding in 5 chapters. So you want to, when you're thinking about that pitch and when you're choosing and selecting your photos, you want to think about chapter 1 is getting ready. Chapter 2 is pre-ceremony. Chapter 3 is the ceremony. Chapter 4 is the cocktail hour. And chapter 5 is the reception. So you really want to sort of tell that story in a nice, sort of seamless way when you're submitting those images. I think it would be a little off-putting to just throw the images in there and they'll be like the reception's the first one and then, the wedding dress is at the very end. So you really need to tell that story chronologically through the photography. So I don't know you, Heather, but I think, over the last 10 years of us trying different strategies on getting our weddings submitted and published, I think that if you really take the publication wedding cycle that we talked about, you guys are going to make your editors super happy and they're going to, they're going to want to work with you in the future, and not to mention help your weddings stand out amongst the rest. So we hope that this was really helpful for you guys, and we're really looking forward to answering questions. And yeah, so
Yeah, so I just want to put the circle up one more time. So we really feel like if you follow this plan, this is going to help you succeed. It's going to help your wedding stand out. And it's just going to give you the tools to not be so scared to really go after those publications that are going to attract your ideal client. So yeah, so thank you guys so much. And we're excited to answer some questions. Do you want to tell about the giveaway?
Awesome. So I know you guys also mentioned you have an offer for attendees. So I don't know if you want to throw this up and then we can take questions while people are taking their time to do that.
You bet. So Heather and I wanted to offer everyone on this webinar $400 off our e-course or one of our in-person workshops. So this is the code that you guys would use. So write it on down. And our e-course is really great because you can take it from the comfort of your own home. And then our in-person workshop is coming up in June. And then we also have one in November in Orange County.
Yeah, and that's a really just a one-of-a-kind experience to be with like-minded people for 3 days and all of the speakers we have. So please be sure to use this code if you're wanting to join us soon, and it will expire on May 10th.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So we're going to leave that offer up there. For anybody who's on the webinar, you click through to the link, it'll bring you directly to the page where you can register. So just make sure you throw in that code. But I think it's going to be an amazing experience. So we have lots of questions. This is great. Yay. Okay. Well, one of the first things that came up sort of in the chat, and there was a small conversation about it, but what do you do if you're in the scenario where the photographer really isn't interested in getting published? Like, how do you deal with that?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I was recently coaching another planner that is on the East Coast, and she had a really a wedding that was going to be at a venue that she's really wanted to work at. It's sort of a sought after venue, but the photographer wasn't someone that she's worked with before, and they weren't necessarily a wedding photographer. So I suggested that she hire a photographer to come do detail shots, but I said, you really need to have that conversation with the couple and the photographer that's shooting it, because you don't want to just show up on the wedding day and sort of have this other person there. It's definitely not going to work out in your favor. So I think part of that is just communicating why and talking to the couple. And if you can, I would bring someone with you to shoot the wedding for publication and not be shooting it for the couple.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
So this again talks about relationships between planners and photographers. So this woman was a newer planner or newer photographer starting out in the area. How would you suggest it's the best for them to reach out to planners to try to network? Is it emails, in person? What do you generally like receiving?
So,
I'll have Heather take that one.
I prefer an email with links, direct links, like make it as easy as possible. Honestly, direct links to your portfolio, a full wedding. I want to see from start to finish how you shoot a wedding, where you've worked, what you're comfortable with, and then tell me a little bit about your ideal client. If just by chance I happen to have a client that seems to fit what you're looking for, and I have one that I'm considering, then I probably will set time to grab coffee with you and move forward. Now, a lot of times we get emails like that, and all the clients that we're working with currently might not be looking for a photographer. They might already all be hired. So just be patient, and I think be kind and make it easy and be persistent in a gentle way.
I want to add to that, because I think there's two parts of this that are really important. And one is, you should, as a photographer, you should really be connecting to planners who also have your similar aesthetic. So our overall brand is much more light and airy. So I don't necessarily want to recommend a dark and moody style photographer. And so that's one, I think, key element that I think sometimes people sort of miss the mark on.
Mm-hmm.
And then two is, if you want to work with us, then send us a client, because we were just recently at a venue that we haven't worked at yet. And I told the venue manager there that I said, listen, we'll do whatever we need to do a wedding here, because we want to show you how we work. And that would be us bringing them a client.
Mm-hmm.
You need to really have the opportunity to work with someone. And the best way for us to get to know a photographer is if we're working with them. So
yeah, that's a really good point. So when you are working with a photographer, this again goes back to a little bit of a chat that was going on. It's sometimes hard to make sure everybody's on the same page. And I know you guys are pros at this and making sure that everybody is aware of what's happening, and that timeline is where it really comes in key. But how do you make sure there's no sort of timeline struggle or people trying to do different things at different times?
Yeah, I think I think having that conversation ahead of time with your vendor team is really important, so everyone's on the same page. And part of your job as a planner is to lead the charge on the wedding day. And things are going to happen. People are going to be running behind schedule, and that's why you want to make sure you have a buffer time in your timeline, so that if you are running behind, then you're still going to be able to get those detail shots. So I don't know, that would be my...
Yeah, and I think in those initial planning phases, when you're talking to the photographer and the design team, it becomes pretty clear how the wedding day is going to go. I think on that phone conversation and how people react to your emails, you're getting a good idea if it's going to be an easy team to work with, or someone who's definitely, like, we've all had photographers that like ran off with the bride and groom for an hour because they wanted sunset photos, or, and then not on the same game plan. So I think that's why that phone conversation is so important. It's really telling of how that will go. And then also, you are just going to have weddings that don't go perfectly, and they may not be able to be submitted because of that. And I think you just have to give yourself the out of, like, life is going to happen. Your couples are going to come first. You're going to come across vendors that are going to be a roadblock. And so that's where I think people have to do maybe some inspiration shoots or reshoot of things to really make sure that those images are able to be submitted.
Yeah. So we're going to take a turn and now talk about florals. So how do you make sure a florist stays within your color palette? This came from Lauren. She said, so often they totally miss the inspiration board, and they'll even tell us that they know they did. So it really does kill the theme of the editorial, the submission, the wedding. How do you combat that?
Lauren, thank you for that question. I saw it pop up and I love it. So one of the things that we like to do is, so we actually have a deck of Pantone colors, and they're Pantone postcards. They're like $12 on Amazon. I highly recommend that any designer or planner has them. And I tend to, when I'm designing, actually pull out those Pantone colors, whether they're 6 or 8. And when I am meeting with a floral designer or getting that initial quote, I'm really communicating. It's more about color theory and the overall feel, and then they get to choose the flowers. But color is very important to stick to. And I think that comes with trust and collaboration from using floral designers that you really know. I think it definitely can be scary using someone new. I've never had someone like completely miss the mark in terms of color, but I have on flowers for sure, like bad flower choices. But so hopefully that's not something that you all encounter often. But I think if you really spell it out, like, here are the colors, then there's really shouldn't be a lot of room for error.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's where the floral mock-up comes in too. Like, the closer that you can do that floral mock-up to the actual wedding day, so they can get, the in-season flowers, the better.
Yeah.
So I think that floral mock-up would hopefully help alleviate any confusion.
And can you explain a little bit what you mean by a floral mock-up?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually something we do in LVL Academy, because it's not something that everybody knows how to do. But for a floral mock-up, we will have the florist do one style centerpiece, because sometimes we have maybe 2 or 3 different styles. So we'll do one style centerpiece. We usually do it at our office, or you can also pair it with your catering tasting if that makes the most sense, or if you don't have necessarily a studio to do it in. We bring in multiple different linen samples, different charger plates, basically anything that goes on that table we're going to be bringing to show the client, and even for us, to like make sure everything looks good, because what you may think looks good in Pinterest doesn't actually work in real life. So it's an opportunity for us to really tweak and change and adjust the design of that tablescape.
Yeah, and so you're going to set up that table usually ahead of time, have the florist come in. You guys will kind of fine tune typically before the client gets there and know ahead of time what you're going to pitch as kind of the final answer for the client. And then when the client comes in, you're walking them through your thoughts on how things will be, and this is what they can expect. And it really allows, I think, for the client to trust the design team more than ever and not be so worried like, oh, I need to see the room, or, oh, I need to see my bouquet, because they know that the quality is going to be there.
And for destination, because we get this a lot, for those vendors who work in destination markets and maybe they don't do a floral mock-up in person, I think it's still good to do it with your florist and maybe then take pictures and send it to your client. So if you have a client who's a little less they're not as hands-on, but it's more up to you and the floral designer as a planner, then I think you should still do it and really use that as an opportunity to make sure your design is completely on point.
Yeah, and if you want to take it a step further, you could even have a photographer come, and there are some of the detail photos you could use if the wedding day does go awry.
Yeah, and Lauren made a good point that there's many times cost that goes along with that, but it's totally worth it.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
All right. So this question, do you think blog publication is better than print for a wedding planner? I've seen print publications very rarely highlight a planner. Usually they're in small text on the vendor list, whereas the photographer is the highlight.
I mean, this is a hard question, but I think it goes back to diversifying. So I do think that print publications are important, and they have their place. And I also think blog, publications have their place as well. If you are looking to increase your search engine optimization, I think a blog is a great place for that. If you're looking to legitimize your brand and really increase, if you are, say you're doing kind of lower budget weddings and you want to do move into a luxury space, then I think print is a great option for that. So I think it depends on your marketing strategy and your ultimate goals, but I do think it's good to be in both.
Yeah, and I do see what you're saying about, I think often in print, we are less highlighted as a planner. Whereas because often we are submitting to the blog, it typically says like from Heather from LVL and then writes the blurb. So I think that is really great for couples to go and see your name specifically attached to that, or your full company, kind of at the top. So I would say probably we tend to go after blogs also because that's easier. There are a lot less print options, and a lot of the print options are a lot trickier to get into.
Awesome. That's very helpful. So there's a question here that actually I can answer. So Tamra, I hope I said that right. So we're a venue that hosts some truly incredible weddings. We notice that so many photographers get through their wedding with the best intentions to get published, but often get busy with new business, so they drop the ball in submission process. Can we, with permission, do the submissions? Yes, yes, yes. And you should. If you want to take it into your own hands, absolutely. And it's exactly the same things you need to be thinking about for that submission process as we discussed earlier. So I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that, but
just loop in the planner.
Yeah,
and photographer.
If you have a planner on these weddings, I think it's great for you to communicate. And I would say, Tamara, it goes back to the point of communication and having a good strategic approach to getting those weddings featured. And like Heather mentioned, making sure that the couple is okay with it as well. So
yeah, we've had couples that are just not okay with their wedding images being anywhere, not on social media, not so you just don't assume that a couple wants to be featured. Some people are really private, and so you just want to make sure that you have the couple's permission for sure.
even if they signed your contract, because on our contract, it gives us permission to use their images, but I think sometimes they don't read it. And I wouldn't want to get through the submission process and then you have to get their approval before you submit a wedding. So I wouldn't want to get to the end and they're like, okay, this wedding's approved. And then the client's like, oh no, I'm not comfortable with that. You know?
Yeah. That's a great point. That's very important. So we've actually had a couple people ask if you could relist the 5 chapters of the story sequence that you went over in the submission.
You got it. So it's pre-ceremony, ceremony, cocktail hour. I think I'm getting ready.
Ready.
Shoot. I don't have my notes. I closed my computer down, you guys. Okay, so getting ready, pre-ceremony, ceremony, cocktail hour, and reception.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have 2 more questions, one from someone who's joined and one from me. So this question is, do you have any tips for if you are looking to do an inspiration or styled shoot for securing a venue? How do you go about that process?
So I think you have to come in with a game plan. I think that if you come in already with a design in play in your head, and also think about that venue and what their brand is and where they would ideally be aligned. So, you know, you have to think about the business side of that and before you're approaching the venue. So I think you need to think about where would they ideally want to be published, and then what kind of style would attract their ideal client, and sort of come to them and saying, almost like if they had their own marketing team and they were going to be putting together a styled shoot for their portfolio, what does that look like? And so how can you just bring that to the table to almost think like that they're like, of course, why would I say no? This is going to help us get more ideal clients. A really good example of this is when I moved to Hawaii, the Montage was just opening up, and I had someone connect me with their catering manager, and I knew that they didn't have any weddings in their portfolio yet, and I had the time to do a styled shoot. So I said, you know, I would love to do a styled shoot that is on point with your brand that you could use for your wedding gallery, and I would like to pitch it to X blog. And I already had an ideal inspiration for this shoot. And she said, absolutely. Because they don't really have a ton to lose either. You know, they're not really providing anything besides the venue. So it's low overhead for them. And I brought in an entire team and we produced a beautiful styled shoot that got featured on a top wedding blog. And now they use those images on their website. So unfortunately now, everyone that contacts me wants that wedding.
and she's sick of it.
I was like, I don't want to do green tropical leaves anymore. Can we do something else now? So
yeah, and you know, Lindsay's example was a hotel, so that potentially is maybe an easier way because they are already operating on the day-to-day, so there is a low overhead to do a styled shoot. Now, if you're going after a venue that is closed on the day-to-day and they would have to bring in like security and cleaning and stuff like that, just be mindful of what you're asking for. And if you do have a budget, perhaps meeting them part way. And then just don't be discouraged if someone says no. There are plenty of wedding venues, and go do, you know, to the next option and make sure that you just keep going until someone says yes.
I love it. That's great. Okay, so final question from me, and it's something that I get asked all the time. So how do you get something published if you feel like the weddings that you're shooting or planning, designing are not the most detail heavy? Maybe you feel like the centerpieces are too small, or they're not the $1 million weddings. And I know you touched on this earlier, so I'd love to see your thoughts on that.
So First of all, just so you know, the closest wedding that I've ever had to $1 million did not get featured, and plenty of our low budget weddings have. So that it's not about price point. I think one of the things we were actually talking about yesterday is don't be afraid to create images that are a little twist of what reality might be. So if you have 3 arrangements on a long table and it would look better than 6 with 6, go take 3 arrangements from the other table, bulk it up, put lots of candles, pull it in tight, like make it look really lush for those detail photos for that one table, and then spread it back out in reality. And I think that, one of my other tips is I usually will get the envelope hand calligraphied, even if the client isn't, with our company name and address, so that it's in the detail photos. So even if they were just going to handwrite it or it was going to be printed, I just have one beautiful calligraphy envelope for those detail photos. So I think both of those things can help.
Yeah. And I like the idea of surprising your client with a gift that will also match a beautiful design detail. So maybe they didn't want to do anything fancy with their place cards, and it's an easy investment to upgrade their place cards or their menus. I mean, there's small places that aren't going to cost you a lot of money where you can add that special touch. Maybe it's a napkin. Maybe you upgrade all of their napkins and say it's a white linen. So let's bring in a beautiful blush upgraded napkin, and then you can also be a hero and surprise your client after you know what they like and what their overall design is. I think that's always an investment that's worth it too.
Yeah, and on that same token, if you're doing the floral mock-up and you know that you have an idea, maybe you want to tie a blush ribbon around a napkin and they won't go for it. Do it yourself. That ribbon is probably not going to break the bank, and that added touch is going to be an element that will maybe set your feature apart.
But the photographer is key, I think, too.
Yeah.
You have to have a really good photographer that can make something that doesn't necessarily look as good in person look amazing on camera. That's not an easy feat. I'm not saying that it is, but a good photographer who's really good at styling and has a great eye, I think, is key in that situation.
Great. That was super helpful. This whole webinar was absolutely fantastic. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. My notebook is completely full. See? So please make sure you follow along with Lindsay and Heather on Instagram, Facebook. I tagged their LVL Weddings and LVL Academy handles in the top of the chat box. So go find them, go find their personal accounts too, and you'll follow along and see a lot of really cool behind the scenes shots of the magic that they make happen all of the time. So
thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you. It was so great to have you.
Yes, anytime. We'll come back anytime.
Awesome. Thanks. Right. And thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a good day, guys.